Sage Wanderer here, and welcome to Coffee Talk. All right, so today we're going to do a special coffee talk that has been greatly requested by my viewers. Today we are going to talk about Andrew Basiago and the Pegasus project. So this guy was a time-traveling child who traveled through time and space. And it's quite interesting, honestly. One thing I have to say about Basiago is that I have to put him in the same category as Svali, my friend, who told me her story so many years ago. And if you're one of the 250,000 people now, nearly, who's viewed my MK Ultra Trainers video, then you know that one of the reasons I believed her was because her story was so detailed. And if she was crazy, she was a special kind of crazy. And I have to say the same thing about Basiago. His story is so detailed, and he knows so much about time travel and kind of the methods and the technology behind it and the history of it, that if he is not a time traveler who did it as a child, whose father was involved in the creation of the time travel project for the Los Alamos labs, the DARPA technology program for time travel, if he wasn't involved in that, then man, he's one smart dude, and he's spent a lot of time researching the concept. So kind of in a nutshell, if you haven't checked out Basiago's story, I suggest that you do it. And the major discrediting thing for me is that he ran for president in 2016 and did not win anything, or did not really make it very far. And you think if he was a time traveler, he would have already known that. I don't know. Time travel. It gives me a headache. But I gotta say, I've watched every time travel movie you can think of. I mean, I have deeply analyzed Back to the Future over and over again. And it almost seems like that's a whole nother video, that Back to the Future somehow predicted our future, like they knew things that were going to happen. Maybe they were trying to tell us something. So Basiago's story, first of all, you got to know this guy's about 50 years old. And so this stuff was going on in the early 60s, apparently. I think he's over 50 years old. He's actually a neighbor of mine in the fact that he lives up in Washington State. Spent his life up there, I think, as an accountant. But his story is that his dad worked for the government, and that his dad was involved in a time travel program that was based on Tesla's technology, which kind of leads us to, is Donald Trump a time traveler? Which that's another video, because it was Trump's uncle who apparently received all of the confiscated Tesla material and was deciphering it for the United States government. And Basiago's story is that once this information was analyzed, that they began to work on and created a giant machine that allowed for time-space teleportation. Teleportation is part of it. Basiago claims that when you are transported through time, you're also transported through space. That it's the same technology whether you're moving through space or through time. Essentially, the Tesla technology suggests that one can open up a porthole through the space-time fabric and essentially open a wormhole through an electromagnetic field and just step through. And that it's not dangerous because you're not breaking down your particles like the teleporter in the transporter in Star Trek. There's no worry of being scrambled and reconstituted incorrectly and ending up like a Picasso painting with your ear over here and your nose where your ear ought to be, or your eye on the back of your head or something. So apparently no fear of that, because you're not being disintegrated and reintegrated. You're essentially just ripping a hole in the time-space continuum and stepping right through. I do find Basiago's story extremely interesting. This cat's detail in his storytelling and in every time I listen to him, it holds up. I can't catch the guy backing over himself. I can't catch him making a mistake. Like I said, if he's crazy, he's a special kind of crazy. One of the most believable time traveler stories that are out there. I found holes in Tidor's story. Apex. Don't even waste your time with the channel Apex. Everything on there is complete science fiction, and not even very good science fiction, and not even very good acting. So don't waste your time with the Apex videos. But Basiago is very believable, and he offers some proof. You know, he gives you a picture that he claims is him at the Gettysburg Address, that he claims to have traveled back in time to the Gettysburg Address, and actually a photo was taken of him in that time that exists today. Really interesting stuff. One of the most interesting things about Basiago's story to me is his claim that, okay, first of all, you got to understand, why did they pick a kid to go time traveling? Let's back up a second. So his dad was in charge of this, and apparently, as the story goes, they could not find, they didn't want to put somebody through this time portal that they'd opened up for fear that they'd get scrambled, because they didn't know what they were dealing with. They didn't want this to be dangerous. And so the argument is that Basiago's father chose him at like 9 years old to be a guinea pig for this project, because he so believed that it was safe, that if that he was willing to put his own kid on the line. And if he believed it was safe enough for his own kid, then it would be safe enough for your kid, and safe enough for anyone. And so apparently, when you're teleporting through just space and not time, just like from one area to the other, less energy is required than when you're bending time. That bending time requires more energy, and apparently at the beginning they had to use children in the project Pegasus, because they could not make a field really big enough to support a full-size human being. And so that they used Basiago as a child to experiment in time travel, and that there was a core of child time travelers. You're never going to guess who one of these time travelers were. He went on to be president. Nope, not Trump. No, you give up? Obama! According to Basiago, Barack Obama was a child time traveler. And so apparently, before they were able to open up an actual portal that you could step through in time travel, that the first step, the thing that really Tesla already had, was a time viewer, where you could create a window and you could travel through time as a viewer, just as a person who was observing without actually going there, kind of like a television. A television in time. And if you follow the stories of Donald Trump, the people that say that he is a time traveler, they say that he not necessarily is a time traveler, but possesses one of these viewers so that he can look into the future. And this is how his predictions are always spot on, and how he is so confident about his own, his own win as a president, and his own success as president, because he's seen it. But apparently, first they invented the viewer, and Basiago claims that he has seen captured video from these viewers of Christ's death, burial, and resurrection. That they were able to look back in time and see Jesus Christ himself walking the earth, preaching the gospel, and confirmed Christ's resurrection. I find that so interesting. Once again, detailed stuff here in Basiago's story. I find him extremely interesting to listen to. Basiago did run for president and failed to win. Apparently he's running again in 2020. Oh, I'm about to give my first on-camera sneeze. I feel it coming. Oh, I'm about to sneeze. Ugh, I'm going to laugh if I sneeze coffee all over the camera. All right, I think it's passed. But Basiago's story is pretty incredible. It's pretty interesting. It's so detailed, and I did love watching it. I'm not sure if the picture of him is just some kid with ill-fitting clothes or whether it's him. It's hard to say. The kid does look like he's got a 70s haircut, but I'm sure there wasn't a whole lot of attention paid to haircuts in children back then in the 1860s. So who knows whether that photograph from Gettysburg is him or not. But I do find his story extremely interesting. It is extremely detailed. I find it very cool that they use this core of time-traveling children. And one of the things that I guess he's saying that one of the reasons they chose Barack Obama is because they did use the viewer to look ahead in time and see that he would become president. So they went and got him and gave him all of the secrets and the inside information and told him he was going to be president and started grooming him for the presidency, apparently. And that this is why it seems to us like all of the presidential elections are rigged. It's because they already know who's going to win, so they can just make it easier and just make it happen for them. I don't know if I believe all that. I don't know if I believe any of it. It's why it's on Coffee Talk. But it is interesting, I gotta say. And Basiago is worth watching. Once again, with a lot of these guys that I talk about in my videos, in my Coffee Talk videos, they don't speak in any segments shorter than an hour or 2 hours. So be prepared to spend an hour of your time listening to Basiago. Or you can just take my word for it that it's pretty interesting stuff. Once again, it's really hard to prove whether his father actually worked for the government or not. And one of the things I find interesting with these whistleblowers is that there's usually absolutely no proof whatsoever of their story because, and they claimed this to be true, and I think it is probably true, that anytime you blow the whistle on anything with the government, they go out of their way to erase you and make it look like you never worked for them, to erase every element and every aspect of you from the government records. Bob Lazar is one of those guys that claimed to work at Area 51, but after he blew the whistle, you couldn't find any proof he'd ever worked for the government at all, and there's a huge chunk of his life missing. And this is kind of the same way with Basiago's father. It's very hard to prove anything. But do check it out if you get a chance to on YouTube. It's Andrew D. Basiago, and he's going to be running for president again in 2020. And he has some interesting and very detailed stuff to say. So if he's a liar, he's a darn good one. All right. You guys have a great morning. Enjoy your coffee.